Welcome to the Corporate Venturing Insider Series, where I interview top practitioners in the CVC world and learn with you the best practices and golden nuggets that they have accumulated over their career. In this episode, we will be learning from Heriberto Diarte, founder and CEO of C Ventures. Heriberto, could you take a few minutes to share your story and how you got to where you are today?
Hi. Well, I was asked to introduce myself first, so I'll try not to bore you to death. The first thing you need to know is that I was born and raised in Mexico, so I'm Mexican. And I grew up there from a family of entrepreneurs. I started my first business when I was 17. And then when I went to study in the UK, I just closed the business. And people asked me, why didn't you sell it? You were making lots of money. And I scratched my head and said, I didn't think about selling the business. So that was my first bad experience with entrepreneurship. But I was 17 years old. I was making a ton of money with this business. It was a little bit insane. And that paid actually for my years in England. Then I studied economics in Mexico. I worked in the family business for a number of years. And that was an interesting experience because the family business was a supermarket chain that went bankrupt because of conversions of Walmart coming to town and our debts in dollars going 3 times as much because of the devaluation of the peso. So that was very difficult 3 years of restructuring a company that my father had created from scratch. And we managed to save it, but we had to transform it completely. After that, I decided that I needed to further my education. And I went to Stanford Business School, where I took a lot of entrepreneurial and investment classes. And then I went to the Kennedy School of Government. I was doing a joint program between the Kennedy School and Stanford. And I got a master in public administration at the same time. I did this with a scholarship from a large Mexican cement company called Cemex, which is the second or third largest cement company in the world. And the reason they gave me a scholarship is because they wanted to hire me when I graduated. So I couldn't fulfill my dream upon graduation of going directly into the investment space because I had a moral commitment to go back to Cemex, which I did. I stayed with Cemex 7 years in the M&A department. And I went to a large company called Alstom. And I was in the transport division, making trains and metros, managing a P&L called Southeast Europe, 16 small European countries. I did very well. It was a turnaround situation. And the best job offer that I got was to be the CEO of an automotive company, a Swiss one. But the board wanted me to move the headquarters to New Delhi, India, which was not on the list. It was not on the list of where to go. So we moved to New Delhi, India with all my family in 2012. It was a great experience. And we lived there for 3 years. So in 2014, I decided to leave my job as a CEO of this company to start a high-tech company in the wearable space to solve a problem that I had as a father. I have 4 little girls, which are my pride and joy and the most important thing in my life. And I've lost them more times than I care to remember. So we developed a solution, a little kid's watch, that can link through the mobile network and send you a ping to your Google Maps where the kid is at all times. So I did that. And then I went to private equity in early 2017. And in 2016, when I was looking for my next job, I started talking to Schneider, and they proposed me this starting their external innovation and corporate ventures. But they didn't give me a job offer. They said, would you be interested in doing this? And I said, yeah, that sounds very interesting. But they moved very slowly, and I got 2 other job offers. So I went to be the operations partner of a private equity firm based in London, managing their portfolio companies and so on. And then Schneider said, is it okay if we still keep talking to you? And I said, yeah, sure. But I said, this is never going to happen. But 18 months after and 15 interviews after, they offered me the job to come and create the corporate venture arm. And that was a dream job. That was a dream job because it combines many things that I've been doing before. And then I joined exactly 3 years ago in November 2017 to create Schneider Electric Ventures. And I'm happy to talk to you more about that.
Very nice. Well, 3 years, happy birthday then. So what I like very much about your journey, you have indeed this mix of corporate and entrepreneurship, and from big companies to starting from scratch many times. So my first question is for those in the audience that are listening, how important is it to have that mix versus a pure corporate profile or a pure entrepreneurship profile?
That's a very interesting question. I think for corporate venturing, the more relevant profile is VC, that you've been doing it for many years, or entrepreneurship, because you can really put yourself in the shoes of the entrepreneur, understand the journey that they have ahead, what tools they have to climb the mountain, what limitations they might have, and also understand when they're exaggerating or not exaggerating, or you're able to put yourselves really in their shoes and understand and evaluate the situation really well. I think you need a combination of both. But if I had to choose one thing, would be the entrepreneurial experience with a lot of patience to understand that corporations move very slowly. They have the not invented here syndrome. They're moving at a very different pace.
Very nice. Can you talk both about the need for empathy and the need for understanding these constraints that entrepreneurs are under, which are very different from a big corporate?
Absolutely. Even though I've started companies from scratch, my last corporate job was the CEO of a relatively large company with 7,700 employees. So basically, for a number of years, I did nothing with my own hands. My job was to meet with people. People would come and present to me. I would say yes or no, do it this way, do it the other way. And I was not actually working with my hands. And I had 2 assistants so that we could have round the clock and 7 days a week. So I had a lot of support. So when I started my last company, it was a terrible and humbling experience because you have to do everything yourself. Your travel arrangements, your filing. We are selling in California. We need to register to sell in California. All these little things that in a corporation you take for granted because there's somebody in tax who said, oh, we're beginning to sell, let's file for a certain permit that we need, let's do all the accounting. Everything is done. You have a structure. And in a startup, you have nothing. You're creating everything. You have to be a jack of all trades and just get it done.
Very nice. And we will talk about building the plan and how to help them build the plan later, which is also the value of a CVC. But before that, let's go back to starting the corporate venture. So you were number one, the guy who started it. How difficult was it to get started? It's like a startup. You have to get started somewhere. What was the most challenging way for you to start?
When finally, my final interview was with the CEO of Schneider. And the first half of the interview, he was grilling me. And then at some point, he flipped and he said, okay, this is the right guy. And then he flipped and he started selling me Schneider and why this is a great job. And then at the very end, he said, okay, this was a great conversation. I'm just going to send an email. We should have you immediately in the company, and this is great. And I said, okay, so I'm the guy. You're confirmed? And he said, yeah, okay. Now I have to tell you, I have conditions. If you want me to come, these are my conditions. We're going to have independence. We're going to have carry. I'm going to hire investors. We're going to do it the right way because otherwise it won't work. And his reaction is, wow, that makes a lot of sense. And thank you. That confirms you're the right guy because nobody talks to me like that. So those conversations at the very beginning were difficult because even though they said yes at the beginning, the DNA of the company was to, oh, but this is out of the structure, it's out of the box. I say, yeah, exactly. I'm here to do things that are out of the box. That's what you need. That's why you hired me. So now trust me and give me the tools that I need to do that. And it worked, but it took a while.
And we will double click on this, but I think the way I see it is companies are very good at distribution curve law. Maybe it's about increasing deal flow or other reasons, but is there a reason that drove you to do not just an investment in one fund, but actually 2 funds on top of direct investments?
So I actually invested in 3 funds, and I'll tell you what the rationale was. The rationale was that we pulverize or increase the exposure to good startups. So in a normal fund, if we carry it, we're going to have 20 to 30 portfolio companies. and we're going to spend, let's say, 500 million. But if I put 20 million here with a fund, 20 million here, with those 60 million, I will be able to see another 60 to 90 companies. And I made sure that we invested in funds where we were an important LP, giving them about 10% of the fund, that we were in the LPAC, that we had quarterly information and we sat together to review the pipeline, the companies, and so on, and that we had access to the startups. Because what Schneider wants is to have access to these startups in our areas of interest and partner with them, absorb their technology, white label their solution, take them to market, be the first ones who are able to use those new technologies or business models out there. So investing in funds would give us an ability to see more of those.
So it's very important to choose your fund very well. And would you say that the investment interest overlap is the most important thing or something else?
I think the investment interest overlap, that your set of things you're looking at and theirs overlap quite well, that is the most important one. But that is not sufficient. That's necessary, but not sufficient. Then you have to choose a fund that is going to be where you are an important LP and they're going to listen to you. They're going to give you access to their companies.
As employee number one of this CVC, with no track record as a CVC, how did you manage to find co-investors? And clearly, co-investors is a very important element of the ecosystem, but also of syndicates.
That's a good question. We led a bit more than 50% of the investments we made. And I think people were able to or willing to follow us, even if I was a new manager, because of the name of Schneider Electric and the domain expertise. Because we have, as a fund, a double bottom line. The first filter, is this strategic for Schneider? Is this something that where we can be a customer or a reseller or something, this technology can be part of our offer? Maybe not even today, but in 2030, in 10 years. So we're willing to invest ahead of ourselves. But the first filter is strategic. And then the second one is, can I make money with this? Is this going to be a good investment? Because if I don't make money, I will see no carry, right? So it's a double bottom line. So luckily, because of Stanford, I have the network. And because of Schneider, we have the credibility of the domain expertise and it's working really well. And as I said, we lead more often than not. We always take a board seat. And we have by now dozens and dozens of great examples of how we have been able to help startups.
I really like the way you connected finding the right co-investors to building the plane, which is to help the startup be successful. Can you give your view about why a financial VC would want to work with corporate VCs? And maybe take the devil's advocate, in which cases it's dangerous to work with a corporate VC?
There's only two dangers to work with a corporate VC, but they are real. The first one is more of a signaling effect, that if you're trying to work with Siemens and GE and ABB and Schneider and Rockwell International, if you have one of these companies in your cap table and only one, the other potential customers might say, Schneider is already inside. Why should I buy from this company? Because Schneider is going to get my data or is going to get some information and whatever. So that's one of the risks. And it's more of a PR risk than a real risk, because we're a minority investor. We sit on the board. We're not going to get the data. And second, we're a fund. And in this business, reputation is very important. When you are asking people to trust you with their money, your reputation and your behavior is incredibly important. So there is a firewall between Schneider Electric Ventures and Schneider Electric. People don't realize that, but we are a separate legal entity. We have full independence. We have our investment committee that is only us. And we have an advisory, not a supervisory, an advisory committee from Schneider that is forward-looking. So we have that independence. That is one of the risks. The second risk that is perceived is that, okay, if Schneider or Rockwell Ventures or whatever is inside the cap table, maybe they want to acquire the company in the future. And this is a real risk. And I'm not going to lie about it. Yes, this could be an outcome. But the thing is, this is not our decision. If that happens, if we're on the cap table, we're on the board, we're helping the company, we see the company growing and has a bright future, it's possible that Schneider will see that and will say, hey, this is really cool. I want to make an offer to acquire them. But making an offer is just giving an option to the entrepreneur and the rest of the board, whether they want to take this option or not. And normally in these kinds of discussions, the Schneider person will have to recluse themselves from those discussions. It's up to the entrepreneur and the other board members. So the way I see it is just an option.
What would be the reasons why a financial VC would want to have a corporate VC the syndicate?
Because we can really add value. We can add real value. Every VC say, oh, I'm a value-added investor. Most of the time it's BS. They do nothing. They don't add value. If corporate VC done well, you can really add a lot of value. One, because you have the domain expertise. Second, because you have the customers. Third, because you can be a customer.
And I've seen that happening, including in your portfolio company. So this is really the value of a CVC. What were some of the arguments you used to convince your CEO and COO of having your units?
There were three arguments. First, I gave them an example. I said, what would you tell me if I told you, you're super smart, we trust you, you're super reliable, so we're giving you the 747 to fly us all from San Francisco to Hong Kong. We're going to give you the plane to fly us all. And people are looking at me like, where is he going with this? And then I said, well, I hope you would tell me, Harry, thank you very much for the trust, but I don't know how to fly a plane. That's not my thing. So many people think because you're smart and reliable and hardworking that you know something. Venture is very specialized. You are either an entrepreneur or an investor for many years to do it. I don't care if you come from Goldman Sachs or McKinsey or you were your best top of the class at Princeton. If you haven't done it, you don't know. So it is important to have your team know what they're doing and to be able to fend off all these pet projects from the R&D teams and the strategy teams that are going to put companies on the table that we know they're going to die or they're going to implode because they don't know. They might get enamored by the potential, but they don't know. So that was one argument. The second argument was in venture to make it big, you have to be right, but you have to be against common sense. Imagine a little matrix. You are right or wrong. If you're wrong, of course, everything's zero. But if you're right and you are together with common sense, everybody will see that opportunity and eventually it's going to get commoditized. So you have to be right, but you have to be disruptive or against common sense. Things that people say, this is never going to work.
I think that's actually a smart way to have these management exceptions. So at least you keep your convictions. I like your number 2, which is to be right when most people are wrong. And we said we would touch about your team. So how do you make sure that in your team, if someone is really convinced, they can go ahead, even if you yourself doesn't believe in it? How do you make sure that happen?
We said that some of the best investments are going to be very controversial. So we let people have their golden ticket and say, we're going to do this, even if all of the rest of you are against. And we say, okay, we hired you because you're good. You know what you're doing. We're going to trust you. We're going to trust you. We don't like the company, but we're going to trust you. Let's go and do it. But you have one ticket every 2-3 years. And if it flops, the next time it's going to be more difficult.
Very nice. And we are at the top of the hour, so I want to finish with one question. If someone is today in a company and that person wants to start a CVC for that company, what number 1 advice you would give them?
The first advice is to get buy-in from the very high level, from the CEO, the chief of strategy, the chief innovation officer, the R&D head, or the chief of technology officer. At that level, you need to socialize with them to get their support. Second, fight to have the right setup from the beginning, to say, look, there are ways to do this right and ways to do this wrong. If we're going to do the typical CVC, we're investing off the balance sheet, we have to ask permission, we don't have independence, we don't have carry, you're not going to let me hire real investors to be part of the team and so on, we're going to lose. So if you want to do this right, these are the things that we need. And I can tell you in another occasion what are the things. The independence, have a mix of internal and external people being investors or entrepreneurs, and then having carry and having the ability to pay good salaries to hire really top people. This business is a question of talent. 20% of the firms get 80% of the value, and 50% of the funds, including normal funds, they lose money. And I think the average CVC that loses money is even higher than 50%. So this is a thing where a business is hard, and most people lose money and are a failure. So if you want to be a success, you need to have the right elements, the right setup, and the right team and tools to be able to do that. So you need the support from the CEO at the very beginning, and you need to get the right setup, because otherwise you're fighting a losing game.
Thank you, Eri. I think they are all amazing advices. I think the audience will be learning a lot and should follow your guidance.
It's a pleasure. Thank you. Bye-bye.